and welcome to Show Love. I'm Bronwen Murphy. Today I'm joined by Michael Bascom. Now, normally I would start this at the present on a podcast, but this journey I feel should be told in life order. So let's start at the beginning with a 4-year-old young boy who is described by his neighbour in Tunbridge Wells, England as enigmatic, charismatic and vibrant. Lovely to meet you, Michael.
It's lovely to be here.
Literally,
That's a very generous description. Thank you.
Right. Well, I can't wait. We've literally just met about 10 minutes ago. And it's wonderful. I've been gagging to meet you. So
yeah, me too.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
And I love your voice. Your voice is going to sound so gorgeous on this. And literally, people are just going to fall in love with you.
Oh, that's hilarious. I've always disliked my voice, you know.
What? Are you joking?
No, really.
It's gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
It's sort of, it's the voice that, it's like, it feels like the voice that everyone would want to hear them, somebody reading the news or reading them a bedtime story.
Okay, well, I'll take it.
Yeah, it's lovely. As everyone will fall in love. So we're going to start at the beginning.
Okay.
You were born in the United States of America and were brought up as a Mormon by your parents back in the UK. Do you mind describing what that entails and what that was like?
Sure. Well, first of all, I always tell people when I grew up Mormon that polygamy, multiple wives, that's in the past. So I grew up with just, one mother. there's just one wife in the house.
Yeah. So they don't do that at all anymore?
No, I mean, there's fundamentalist Mormonism, like the fundamentalist LDS, Latter-day Saint, which is in certain parts of Utah. But the mainstream stopped it at the kind of beginning of the 20th century.
Right.
And so... But it is very conservative Christian, and they believe in another book that kind of complements the Bible and stuff. And but it's also different from Amish as well. People often think it's either polygamous or similar to Amish, there's no electricity, or both. But it's, it's more contemporary than that. But it is still, quite a hardcore kind of branch of Christianity.
And when you say conservative, like what exactly does that mean? Well,
for example, Mormons don't drink alcohol. They don't drink tea or coffee. They don't smoke, no drugs, even though, you shouldn't swear either, like all sorts of different, no sex before marriage.
So basically no fun. Right? Fun not allowed.
Yeah, no, but you're not allowed to have any vices, really. It's very sort of Puritan in that kind of way. You know what I mean?
So how come you were born in America and how come your parents were Mormons?
Well, so my dad is American, and my family history actually goes back a long way with Mormonism. So my dad, Utah is a state in the US that was founded by the Mormon Church. And the pioneers, they were Mormon pioneers that went there and sort of settled the place. And some of my ancestors were part of that. So, there's a long Mormon family line there through my dad's side. And then my mum joined when she was a teenager. And they met when my dad was living in London for a few months back in the 70s.
So your mum's British?
Yeah, my mum's British. Her family's not Mormon, but she converted. They met. And
what you do for love.
Well, yeah, and they fell in love, and then he went back to the States, but they kept writing, and then they got to meet up again about 5 years later, and they got engaged and got married. It's a really romantic story, actually.
And you've got other brothers and sisters, and so you were all brought up as Mormons.
Yep, I'm the youngest of 4.
And then obviously you came back to England.
Yeah, so when I was 1.
Right.
So my parents were living in the States and, raised my other siblings up until my oldest brother was about 11. And then, decided to move back. My mum wanted to be closer to her parents. Yeah. And so we moved back to the UK when I was 1, and that's kind of the story there. And
then you grew up in Tunbridge Wells, where you met your neighbour.
Cheryl, he spoke very glowingly.
Yeah, he spoke very glowingly of you.
That's so nice. I have to thank Cheryl for that.
And when she listens, when we name check her, I'm sure she'll be
of course, love
very
you, Cheryl.
Happy. So they believe in different levels of heaven. You did tell me this on the phone a little bit. Can you explain that a little bit? I don't know much about Mormonism.
Yeah, so basically, one of the kind of differentiating things is that the church doesn't really believe in a typical heaven and hell. It's, they believe in, there's the top level of heaven called the celestial kingdom, and that's where God lives physically. And, and if you get to that level, if you've been a really good Mormon and done all the right things, then you can go there and you can also eventually become a god. That's kind of the goal of Mormonism. And then there's the terrestrial
kingdom. And is that when you can start having fun?
When you become a god? When you create your own rules.
Yeah. You to forfeit all the fun, and then you get there.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to do this,
Yeah,
and this.
yeah.
But then there's the terrestrial kingdom, which is below that, which is where you become like an angel or something. As if you're like a good person, but you weren't like a good Mormon, basically.
Yeah.
And then there's the telestial kingdom, which is like below that, which is where it's apparently still meant to be amazing heaven, but it's like where you go if you like were like, I don't know, if you did really bad things even. And basically there's no sense of hell. You know, then there's like outer darkness, which is kind of not really understood. And it's kind of, so the thing is, it's actually quite, in many ways, kind of happy-clappy in terms of the eternities. But,
so if you do something wrong, is there not a fear of anything then? Or
well, so this is interesting because this is kind of where it comes into, you know, so I'm gay, I've got a husband, you know, and I kind of broke away from the church as a result of that because, you know, gay marriage isn't accepted by the church, and the church has a very strong lobby actually against gay marriage and hasn't historically. It's slowly changing that, but you know it still is, you know, in terms of policy, very anti-LGBT. You know, and for example, Proposition 8 in California, you know, they lobbied very heavily. I can't remember if Proposition 8 was that banning or proposing gay marriage. Do you remember this? It was back in like 2008.
No.
But anyway, I can't remember exactly which way it was, but they were very much, you know, on the side of not allowing gay marriage, and they funded millions into that. And that was around the time when I was kind of actively realizing my sexuality.
Yeah.
You know, so basically, to kind of answer your question about, you know, kind of growing up with the church, there's multiple levels to it because I went to an all-boys school, all-boys boarding school. I didn't board, but still, this culture, you know, you can imagine kind of Tom Brown's School Days as a closeted Mormon.
Yeah.
There's just so many layers, right?
Yeah, I mean, wow.
So many opportunities for bullying.
Yeah.
So on the first hand, people would kind of, you know, bully me because I was a bit kind of socially separated because, you know, I wouldn't drink, I didn't swear, I didn't do all these different things.
So with people that weren't Mormons.
Which was everyone, you know, in the culture, you can imagine a lot of, you know, boys, you know, most of them kind of, you know, boarding in without maybe, you know, the everyday parental influence kind of telling them not to do this, that, the other, egging each other on. You know, that was tough. But then also being obviously gay, but in the closet.
Yeah.
And not able to confront that myself as a Mormon, you know, that was another difficulty.
So you knew, though, it all the time.
So, yeah, I always knew deep down, like, you know, ever since I was a little kid, you know, it was obvious, you know, I mean, I used to... Not that this is what all gay kids do, but, you know, I always used to wear my sister's dresses and, you know, I loved, you know, the makeup and all that fabulous stuff and everything. It's funny, actually, that's, it's interesting. I like, because I'm not so much, I don't really so much identify with that kind of aspect of things now so much. But very much when I was younger, it was so obvious, you know, you'd look at me and I was such an obvious little gay boy. And, you know, and so then kind of coming to terms with my sexuality later on, it was kind of when I approached 18, and for me, physically, I'd always known that I was attracted to men, but because there hadn't been the emotional connection, then I was able to ignore it and push it under the carpet.
That must have been so difficult for you, though.
Yeah, it's funny because it's funny because now I'm such like an open book with my emotions, which has been an active effort. But it's because when I was a teenager, I was so invulnerable, you know, and so I was so emotionally invulnerable that even I myself didn't know what I really felt.
Yeah.
And I think that because of that, I then went through. After that, I went through this phase of being way too open with people.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That actually
because you've been close for so long.
Exactly.
Being a good Mormon, yeah.
So I had to kind of then learn how to actually put boundaries, you know, in place for myself, you know, personally, professionally, all that stuff, romantically. But you know, that's a whole separate thing.
Well, you probably ended up getting hurt that way as well, right?
Yeah. But you know, also, you know, luckily, well, so anyway, I'll kind of finish this kind of thing. You know, basically, I met someone that, you know, I had quite an emotional connection with, and it was a boy, you know, it was a man, and you know, one of my school friends, and that's when I started to realize, oh, you know, actually, there's something more here than just this physical aspect, and actually, you know, it's something which I'd never felt before, but this is what. You know, people talk about when they talk about, you know, fancying things, you know, fancying someone.
And how
old
old
were
you then?
I was 18.
Right.
So it was just before my A-levels.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's quite late to be feeling...
Yeah.
You know, you've suppressed that for 18 years.
Well, exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was kind of incredible.
It must have been like a jack-in-the-box.
Yeah, honestly.
When you went, hang on, I'm feeling this!
I mean, I was like, yeah, honestly, I was like a 12-year-old, really. Like, it's weird because I felt overly matured in some ways and then very developed in others. And that took a long time, actually. And that's quite a common thing in the gay world, that when people come out, they're kind of almost like a teenager.
Yeah.
You know, I've known someone, for example, that, you know, they were very much, and they've described themselves in this way. You know, they were a monk for like 20 years or something. They were even an abbot. And then he came out, you know, and kind of was dating, and he even said, you know, I'm kind of emotionally, romantically, sort of feeling like a 15-year-old, really, you know, because it's the first time that he'd been able to, and he was learning, and it's really fascinating. It's really a thing that isn't discussed.
I kind of wish I could go back to that feeling, to be honest. Start that all over again. I'm just old and jaded.
Yeah, me too. Happened quickly.
I've said it, when you were young you wanted to be like Mozart. We're going to come to that with your dream of doing music. So you realised you were gay about 18.
Yep.
So you went to Utah. You were going to do the Mormon mission in America, and then it didn't happen.
Yeah, so basically, so when I was 18, so this happened, I then came out to my friends, then came out to my parents, but I hadn't really done...
So you found out yourself and then decided to come out to everyone straight away?
Yeah, it's kind of hilarious. Actually. I was actually the first person in my year at school to come out, which is incredible because I was the only one that, you know, was kind of in such a hardcore religious
it's
setting.
incredible.
I don't know, maybe other people were, I don't know,
yeah.
But, you know, I think I would have suspected that people would have before, but that also says a lot about the culture at my school, that no one came out, you know what I mean? This is back still, you know, around 2010.
Where was your school?
It was Tunbridge School.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very kind of old
Posh.
British public school, exactly this kind of thing, you know. And that was 2010, and things have changed actually, even just in the last 13 years.
That's great.
You know, I think that I see teenagers now. I can't imagine the kind of like bullying and slurs that were just thrown around so casually in my social.
Oh, me too. I'm older than you, and
you know what I mean.
When I was at school, nobody talked of it. Nobody.
Right.
And it's funny you say about the fact that you were, you know, quite obviously gay. I'm sure a lot of people were like, no shit. Yeah, great.
Well, of course. I mean, like everyone knew before me.
Yeah.
You know.
And they were proud of you, I'm sure, when you.
Well, yeah. Although I kind of it was kind of like, you know, an explosion. I mean, I just kind of, you know, because I suddenly felt liberated, and so, you know, I still look back and kind of cringe sometimes.
No.
But you know, I've kind of learned to love.
Look at it as a celebration.
Exactly. Yeah. And now, you know, with more kind of perspective and more kind of self-love in those ways, I you know, embrace the kind of young dumb Michael.
So did you do the mission before or after you came out?
Well, so in Mormonism, you're expected to go on a 2-year mission. You know, go teach about the church. You know, they send you somewhere in the world when you're 19. Now I think it's 18 for everyone, but then it was men at 19 are expected to do this. So there was this looming as well. So I told my parents that I was gay, but the thing is, I hadn't really thought ahead. I hadn't really come to terms with where I stood with the church yet, theologically. I knew that in terms of myself romantically, I didn't, you know, I wasn't aligned with that. Yeah. But theologically, I hadn't really thought about all that. And so, you know, so I kind of came out to them, and you know what, they weren't angry or anything like that. You know, they didn't threaten to disown me, nothing like that. But there was a lot of sadness because this is where the discussion earlier on about the degrees of heaven, you know, these levels of heaven comes in. To be with your family in eternity in Mormonism, you have to live all of the Mormon rules. Right. And so for them, because, you know, they believe and still do believe, you know, this strongly, then there's a theological disconnect, right? Because obviously they love me hugely, but also they're being told by the church that, oh, you're not going to be with him, you know, in the eternities, you know, and that was a real struggle, you know, and so that was, I would have preferred actually if they'd been angry. Yeah, really? Yeah, because rather it would have been easy to be like, oh, whatever, you know, screw you. But no, that sadness, because I understood where they were coming from too, and I didn't have an answer for that, you know, because there still isn't an answer for that. You know, the church is still quite hard and fast on those things. I do believe that things will change. Let's hope so. But anyway, and also just to quickly wrap up that whole thing with the parents, you know, well, so basically I went back in the closet, in a sense, went to Utah because I'm half American, could just move there. All my siblings were there, and was preparing to go on a mission. I was assigned to go to Australia, to Melbourne, but teaching in Mandarin. So I'd be teaching the Chinese community in Melbourne. They were going to teach me.
Wow.
So they have this whole whole language school
You're
and
so
stuff.
talented.
Well, I mean, I didn't end up doing it, so I can't speak Mandarin.
The fact that you were thinking about doing it.
Well, it's just what they taught you. It's just what they assigned me. I had no choice over it really. But then basically,
do you not? You don't have a choice. They just tell you where you're going.
Exactly. Yeah, you tell them a bit about yourself, and then they tell you. So I went there, and basically my mission call kept getting delayed. In large part because I'd come out as gay, and they wanted to give me an assessment. This is in Utah. They wanted to assess for how gay I was to see whether I was going to try and seduce my mission companion, basically.
Wow.
So they'd send me to a therapist.
How can you say how gay you are?
Well, I've thought about this a lot.
Yeah.
I've got no idea.
No. What did they ask you? Was it like a would you lick it? Would you suck it? What were the questions?
I really, even looking
How
back,
gay are you?
I've got no idea, because I met with the church sponsored therapist, but we didn't really talk much about that stuff. It kind of turned into a normal therapy, actually. And she was lovely. I loved her. Jean, her name was, and she was so nice. And really, really supportive, actually. But I've got no idea.
Do you think they assessed that you probably were very gay, and that's why they sent you to Utah? Because you went to the heart.
Well, but so they're thinking, he's committed. He came to the heart of things to kind of fix this.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think
maybe they think they can fix it. I don't know.
They do. Yeah. So I think that
imagine.
they saw that I, was, because at the time I was still genuinely trying to be the best person I thought that I should be, which was being a good Mormon. And I think that I'm assuming that they probably interpreted that my intentions were to align with the church. But it's hilarious because, I know that if I'd have had a mission, because basically on your mission, they assign you with someone, another man for like months at a time, and you live with them. Yeah, and absolutely, if I met someone that, I fancied and they fancied me as well, I've got no self-control. I'm sure that, I would have just fallen in love with them.
I'm sure it happens. I'm sure it happens all the time though.
I'm not a stoic really.
Yeah, so. No, exactly.
I'm not saying anything sorted through that, but it's just, that, totally, I would have, if I'd have, it just took the first person I fancied to leave the church. I don't know what they were thinking. But anyway, no, but long story short, over the course of about 4 years, I was kind of in this limbo spot. I wasn't doing university because I was delaying it to do the mission, but then I wasn't doing the mission, and then the mission call eventually got cancelled because it had been too long. And then...
it probably was a good thing, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm very glad for that for myself. And but basically, it meant that it was 4 years of just focusing on myself and my spirituality, and kind of, again, this kind of overdeveloped in certain aspects of my life, under in other ways, because I had this time to really confront who I was as a person, what I believed and what my values were. And I kind of reached a breaking point, which I'm now very happy to, be open about. I kind of had an existential crisis. Basically, I was on the point of I was on suicide ideation. What do they call it? When you consider seriously about it. I didn't necessarily attempt, really? But I was thinking, you know what? And I kind of challenged God. I was like, you know what? I think that, I've been a good Mormon, and I think that, you're not meant to ask for signs, but I think that now is a time when it's justified, because I'm on the brink, really.
Yeah.
And I felt this kind of overwhelming solitude. I felt very much kind of on my own, which sounds horrible, but actually to me it was amazing.
Was it?
Because it suddenly felt like there wasn't someone in my head telling me what I should be doing.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I felt, it's funny because I'm a very spiritual person actually now, way more ever than I was when I was inside the
church.
Not
religious at all.
I'm not religious, no, but I'm very spiritual. But it's interesting that I think that at that moment, whatever, God, universe, energy, whatever this is, I needed just to suddenly have this feeling to realize actually I can control my own life.
Yeah.
And then because of that, I chose, I choose life, and I choose, because I kind of thought, if, you're always taught, that God is, sorry, you're getting very theological.
No, I love it.
But, we're always taught, that God is, all loving, more loving than we can comprehend. And so I just thought to myself, well, okay, if I had a child and I really loved them, why would I, and if I could choose something, why would I give them something which I know is going to be a real burden on their back, such as, making them gay? You know what I mean? Even if, there's arguments as to whether someone's born gay or not. The fact is, if God is all-knowing, then he's going to know that that's going to be a thing, right? Yeah. A trial. And something so integral to people's personalities that to me, I was like, well, what kind of sociopath would you have to be like, I'm going to make you gay, or I know that you know you're going to have these feelings through your life, but that's your cross to bear.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And you better, you know,
Stephen Fry
you just better
said
have
some
more
amazing
faith.
things
You
like
know what I mean?
that. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
About he said he can't believe in it because why do you give? Why would God give children bone cancer? Why would He make people abuse children, whatever? And it's like it's true. That is true. Like, why would any of that stuff happen?
Well, right.
If he was the loving person.
Well, and so that's the thing is that I certainly believe that there's probably I don't know and I'm also I'm very like hyper rational as well in certain ways. Like I believe I don't know. This is going to go into too many conversations, but like for example, the idea of consciousness. And I had a super interesting conversation with a neuroscientist friend at Cambridge
bring this on. I love science.
About quantum neuroscience.
Okay, go. Now I'm going to fall in love with you. Come on.
Well, I shouldn't be the spokesperson for this because I know absolutely nothing about this field.
Simplify it anyway because I won't get it otherwise.
From what I understood, basically, there's a theory in quantum neuroscience that the brain isn't large enough to contain the data which the conscience has.
Right.
So basically, it's the idea that our brains are like an iPhone,
and
our conscience is the cloud. And our conscience is multidimensional, and we download what we need in a given moment into our brain. It does, right?
That's what dark energy is, then, is it?
Well,
the stuff we don't know about.
The thing is that if you think about it, back in, just before Newton, right? It was like the Renaissance, the humanities. It was like this kind of whole thing where they thought that humans were at the pinnacle of knowledge. We hadn't even discovered gravity yet. You know what I mean? And I think that all of these things and all these things to do with spirituality and energy and the emotional energy you feel with people and, these kind of knowings that people have and these near-death experiences, I think that all of it will one day be able to be very simply, in retrospect, described by physical forces.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's so much that we know
I hope it happens in our lifetime.
I mean, it's amazing to think about, right? And there is obviously the fun of the mystery, but also, the problem with that is that it leaves a lot of room for people, for example, cult leaders or even, kind of more state-sanctioned cult leaders through religion.
Yeah.
To actually take advantage of the mystery and lead people down saying, I've got the answer, and we don't know what the answers are for that. But
talking of cult leaders, you haven't seen it, but I cannot not mention the Book of Mormon.
Musical.
Which the musical, because you are musical and you were a Mormon. It's just one of the most amazing musicals I've ever seen. I cannot believe they get away with the things they do. and have you not seen it because of or just you haven't got around to it?
For a long time, actually, it's interesting you ask that because I've never thought about that before, but it's true. For a long time, actually, I did avoid it because I didn't want to have anything to do with the church at all, good or bad. When I left the church, eventually, I decided that I wasn't going to go on a campaign against it because there's multiple reasons for that. First of all, because I was done and I didn't want to be controlled by the church going against it or for it. I just wanted to have
just let it go.
Break. Just let it go. Exactly.
It's not
just
good
move
for
on
you.
With my life.
Yeah.
And second of all, the people, at least with my community, with my parish, they call it a ward in Mormonism, but my parish growing up in Tunbridge Wells, even whenever I would come visit, and now I'm living here again, I would always go back and see them because they're your
friends.
Yeah,
right?
they were my community growing up,
yeah.
and we were really close. And for them, it was always more about us as a community than that. And and I can see that so many living in Utah as well. A lot of people really are just trying to be the best version of themselves according to what they've been taught.
Yeah.
And so
religion's generally hope, isn't it? A lot of it
is.
It's like the hope that we can, like you say, be the best person, treat there's some bad eggs out there that take advantage.
And you get the full breadth. I really believe that you get the full breadth of humanity within every community, religious or not. And you have assholes and great people within all of that. And the thing is, just being within a community like that, which is so engineered around a shared belief system, that people, it's hard when you've been, because in the church, they really do raise you every single week. You're told this, you're singing the songs. It's kind of, brainwashing is a harsh term for it, but, you are indoctrinated from a young age into believing these things, and it's hard to break that, but also people are still good or bad people. And I think that people, it's just their way of seeing the world. So I don't hold it against the members of the church, Does that make sense?
No,
Like my
cool.
issues with religion is more the kind of, the dogma and canon that have been created to entrench certain power structures over the years as bad
Absolutely.
influences have utilized that. As we know, look at Christianity, early Christianity, even lots of contemporary strands of Christianity. I say this because we think it's all forgiving and stuff, but actually, there's a lot of real hardcore policies, against women, against gays, against all this stuff that now, has opened up a bit and relaxed more because in Western societies, we kind of, are more of that mindset.
Yeah,
but
but you did break free, and now, I mean, if one day when you're ready, I think you would thoroughly enjoy Book of Mormon. It's so funny.
Oh, so I was going to say that now it's just because I haven't got around to it, because I would love to see it, because I've heard from so many friends, especially ones that have left the church, that actually there's so many little references.
Yeah,
that
so
are hilarious.
many. You'll be just pissing yourself laughing.
I would love
you
to
really
see
will.
it. Yeah, I really think it'd be funny to go. Actually,
it's wonderful and absolutely shocking. I've never been so open mouthed before. So you broke free, and you came out, and then you went to university. Your Mozart dream. So very, very gifted at music. We're moving on to your music now, and I'm very excited. You went through Cambridge.
So I had all this experience with the church. By that point, it was 2013, I think, when I left the church. 2014, I can't remember. And then I moved back in February, and then obviously I'd missed the deadline for university application, so I had to wait until the following October. Interviewed as a mature student, got accepted into St Edmund's College, Cambridge. Do you know about the college system at Oxford and Cambridge?
I studied life coaching at Cambridge.
Oh, really?
It's probably nothing like you.
I can totally see you'd be a great life coach. I can totally see that. No, but basically, it's just because a lot of people are confused by this. The colleges, it's like the US, how there's 50 states which form the country, and they're kind of autonomous, but they also form one country. Same in Cambridge. There's 31 colleges that form the university. Your lectures are centrally, but your social life and where you live and stuff is in the colleges. So I was accepted into St Edmund's College, which was a mature college, which is amazing. So I started that when I was 24. And
then you went on to get a master's in Guildhall.
Yep, opera writing and making.
Opera writing, I mean, you're so talented. And now you are a composer, which is fantastic. Please tell us about being a composer and how you wrote a musical for the Edinburgh Fringe.
Oh, fun. Okay, well, basically, so my musical, which I did at the Fringe, that was between my undergrad and my master's. But it was something which, when I was 18, first coming to terms with my sexuality, I wanted to write. So it was based on Wuthering Heights. And you've read Wuthering Heights?
Yeah, years ago.
Right. So it's kind of, torture, kind of toxic relationship between Heathcliff and Cathy, and I loved it. Obviously, this kind of messed up, impossible romance. I was like, this is me.
Yes.
And so I would write these songs, basically kind of for a concept album. I knew that I was going to do a musical eventually. And so over the next 10 years, I would just write songs for this, eventual musical. And then in Cambridge, in my last year...
10 years?
Yeah, just here and there, I would write a song, okay.
Hamilton took 7 years.
Oh, really?
Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I have, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say that my musical is like Hamilton, but, it's just, it was just like being an afternoon here and there. I'd have an idea for a song, I'd write it, and I'd be like, oh, yeah. And I always knew that after I left Cambridge, I wanted... So Cambridge, I spent mostly... kind of catching up on the lost social experiences, which I felt I hadn't had as a teenager or in my early 20s.
That must have been wild.
I mean, I was the social secretary for my college. Wow. So, the LGBT sec as well. And I did drag and, I'd organise big parties. And basically most of my time was out because I'd kind of learned by this point what the formula they want, for the exams. So I kind of knew how to be nice to myself, optimize my studying time
through the system. Love it. I can have this percentage party, this percentage.
Well, because I realised that they designed the system that 80% of people get a 2-1.
Okay.
In the arts, 10% get a first and 10% get a second.
Wow. And
so I'd seen friends work their asses off that were so intelligent to get a first, but because one paper that they did maybe the examiner didn't like it so much, like dissertation, for example, which, is always tricky, then as a result, it brought down the whole thing and they ended up getting a 2-1, a high 2-1, but still a 2-1. At the end of the day, that's what it is. So I just kind of realized, okay, so I can, I know what I need to do in order to get that. So basically, I may as well enjoy myself.
Brilliant.
Build myself in these other ways. Develop my composing, because there wasn't a huge composition focus at Cambridge. It's more of a musicology degree about music history, music analysis, that stuff. And kind of and then when it comes to the exams, I kind of do what they want. And
so there isn't so much practical there, and you wanted to play.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean,
and you play piano.
I play piano and I sing. Yeah, and I did the recital, and that was probably my best ever performance experience, in the sense of, because what I did with my recital, it was really interesting. The lady in charge of that module, she basically, do you know the concept of duende by García Lorca?
You really show me up now.
The only reason I know
Stop asking me questions.
Because the film which I wrote for later on was all about this. But basically duende is like the idea of, like when you see a performance and maybe the performer isn't super technically great, but there's something that just moves you.
Yeah.
That they call it duende. It's like the idea has that there's something about it.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I hadn't heard of it until doing this.
Yeah. No,
movie,
I definitely heard of it. I did drama. I mean, I'm sure it came up there.
Right. I'm sure.
Forgotten everything, but
right. Yeah. And so basically, and she basically was saying she wants this, So I did a performance of musical theatre songs. Cambridge is very classical, but I said, is it okay to do basically a cabaret kind of my life up to this moment? And so I did that. I picked out a load of songs ranging from Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, I loved Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Even one from Hamilton, actually. And different songs like that. You know what I mean?
Can I just tell you, in university, sorry, no, this isn't about me, but you'll appreciate this. I wanted to put on, because I was president of the Drama Society, I wanted to put on Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh my gosh.
And I wrote to Richard O'Brien, can I get the rights? And I wrote rights wrong. I spelt it wrong. And he wrote back and said, nobody's getting the rights. And it spelled like this. But at least he replied to me. But now, obviously, he's given the rights.
They have given the rights then now?
They have now. Now anyone can perform it. But I know, it's absolutely brilliant.
That would be so much fun.
Yeah, it would be so much fun.
You can be Janet. I'll be Frankenfurter.
Of course.
Let's do it. Just we're putting this on, and we're casting ourselves. After a thorough auditioning process, we have decided.
I love it. So you did some songs from Rocky Horror Picture Show and Hamilton.
Well, and the last song was "I'm Going Home" from Rocky Horror Picture Show. And it was such an emotional thing because all of my friends, I invited all my best friends from Cambridge to come and watch. It's in the auditorium, but it's an exam, so they say public can come, but almost no one comes. But for me, I had my 10 friends there, and the examiners at the back. And I was telling this story, and then it gets to that song because it'd been the end of a chapter. I'd grown so much as an individual, but also so much, in terms of an artist and stuff. Because so much of, it's funny because even though the academics, which I had less interest in, I kind of, like I said, optimized my time. I spent a bit less time on that and focused more on these other developments. As an artist, so much of it is about how in touch you are with yourself, right? You know what I mean, and how vulnerable you can. The degree in which you're able to be vulnerable on stage, I think, often is correlated with the degree in which you are in touch with yourself, right? And I think that I'd come to, and that's why I did drag at university, because it's funny, because when I said earlier on about how, I'm not so much into the kind of dress and makeup stuff now, it's funny because I think that because I went to such a kind of extreme expression.
You embraced it massively,
through that, exactly, at Cambridge in those middle years, it kind of helped me just lose a lot of the kind of stigmas and shames that I had about myself and about my identity, which then facilitated me to arrive at this point of kind of really being in touch with myself. And it's funny because since I've done that, I'm not really drawn to actually that stuff anymore. I think it was a tool for me, that's not to say it's for everyone, I love drag, and I think it's fantastic. But for me personally, I don't think I am a drag performer really.
Yeah, no.
I just utilize aspects of that. But the point being, sorry, I'm rambling.
No, I love it.
Is that in this recital, then it got to this point of singing "I'm Going Home," and I realised in that moment the journey that I'd gone through, because it was really the culmination.
You cried.
Really, yeah, because it was the culmination of the Mormonism in secondary school, breaking away from that, going to Utah, arriving, finally getting to Cambridge, because there was always this dream of doing my undergrad finally and getting that done so I could get on with the rest of my life. And being there and seeing these people which I loved in the audience and sharing that. And I just remember singing "I'm Going Home," and then I started getting emotional. And then I remember seeing my friends Zoe and my friend Mariana, they just started to cry, and then I started to cry, and then they were bawling, and then I was bawling, and then the examiner was bawling, and it was just like this. It was this tear fest, and then I finished.
I hope you got a bloody good mark.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I got a first for that paper.
Oh, good. You deserve that.
But it was great because it was cool as well to understand that's what performing is about. But then it also means that if I know that I can't reach that, then for me it's not worth. I don't have something enough to show. You know what I mean? So I'm quite like, in terms of performing now, I'm quite like particular about when and how, because I want it to be something really. And same with my composing as well, really. I want to, every single project I do, I want to, even if it's something silly, even if it's a little jingle, I want to find some truth in that, whether it's just something totally ridiculous and absurd and funny to me, just sharing that, or whether it's, it needs to be something which I think is, needs to be shared, really, and a truth of mine that also needs to be shared.
Well, you're living your truth, so that's
yeah, well, I'm trying.
But your musical, you had loads of things go wrong, and didn't you? So wasn't it a bit of a disaster? Oh,
that's hilarious. Sorry, I forgot that's what we were talking
about.
No,
it's fine. I love it. It's great.
So the Cambridge run, that's what I was saying there, was, it was really good, sold out performances, great reviews. So then had all this excitement going into Edinburgh and hearing about Six the year before and stuff like that, it's like, this is going to be amazing.
Yeah, watch out, Scotland.
And, things were opening up really fluidly up to that moment. Sorry, I was going to say moment. Up to that moment. And so I felt really good going into it. And and then, as soon as we got there, I mean, the lead lost her voice the opening weekend.
Wow.
And obviously I wasn't going to be like, you have to sing, rude, destroy your voice. No, so we had to cancel the performances and fly in, and my friend to learn the whole thing in one day. Someone got hypothermia and then got hit by a car.
Oh,
it was just like the piano malfunctioned and one of the things. It was just all this stuff. But you know what? It's amazing because it was like a phoenix. We went for the whole run of Edinburgh, the whole thing.
Didn't you get ill as well, though?
I did. Oh yeah, I forgot I had the mumps. Yeah. Literally, I mean, who gets the mumps nowadays?
But didn't you have like
Victorian
a
illness?
Disfigured face?
I did. I had a huge growth on the left side of my face, and I had to go. There's only one media networking event in the whole Fringe. And that was when I had the growth. And I remember going there and people were like, like they could tell that I was sick.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to spend much time with me. And I'm sitting there trying to convince them to come to my show. It's like, but they're looking at, the growth rather than me.
Now, some would say this was the universe saying, you're not ready yet. This can't be successful. And sending all these things to make it not happen.
Well, you know what? Like, I at the time, because I had all these expectations and I thought that's what I wanted to do and I thought that was it, then it was so tough. But I really learned so much about resilience in that moment and about just pushing forward. And by the end of the show, we got a 5-star review. The singer got, an award for Best Voice at the Fringe. Like, it really rose like a phoenix.
Through all that.
But, but you know what? I'm so glad that I had every imaginable thing that could go wrong, that was out of control. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just go wrong. It was all these random twists of fate. And then afterwards, I was just like, man, like, this is my expectation. But I was like, you know what? I know that I've learned something from this, and I know it's what I had to learn. And in retrospect, I'm so glad because now it's so clear to me that wasn't the right path for me. And actually, if I had the choice now, genuinely, I would say no. I don't really. I love writing for the stage, but what I expected of my career then and where I was, that wasn't. I wouldn't want that for myself, and I actually think that past me was protected in that way. Actually,
yeah, definitely.
I really do believe that.
Way.
And I say that with no kind of sense of trying to persuade myself, no sense of you know what I mean. Like there's not a genuine. I really genuinely believe that.
Oh yeah, it's amazing how things like that happen.
Yeah.
So you have written musical or composed for a movie, a film.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, so that was really unexpected because I thought I was going to do stage stuff. So I did the musical. Was a bit disillusioned with the kind of commercial musical theatre world at the Fringe. I think because, when you're there and you're not having the most commercially successful experience and you're seeing all these other things, it does, it's hard to swallow, but also realising how sales-based it kind of is. You know what I mean? This isn't me dissing all musicals. I'm just saying the expectation versus the reality was a bit of a disconnect.
Unfortunately,
yeah, exactly. And I hadn't realised. So and for me, I didn't realise what a classical musician
we're so young
really
and passionate, aren't we? And then You see the reality of life.
Exactly, and I didn't.
Sorry,
realize...
folks.
Well, and I didn't realize what I really wanted to do as an artist at the moment. But I then got in touch with Guildhall because there was a master's in opera writing and making in association with the Royal Opera House, and I was like, this looks amazing. I liked opera, but I didn't, I'd never tried writing an opera, but I knew that was, in terms of the technical demands as a composer, it's kind of like one of the most technically demanding things you can do, because you're having to write for voice, for ensemble, for chorus, and also for orchestra, and balance all of those forces. So I was like, you know what, in terms of, because I didn't get a ton of technical training in composition. That's not me complaining there about Cambridge. It's just me saying that wasn't the primary focus. I knew I needed to fill in that deficiency because I hadn't had a regular composition teacher. And I thought, this would be a great thing. And maybe also that's my path, to go a more art music route as opposed to, in this world of musical theatre. And I got in touch with them and spoke with Julian Phillips, who's the head of composition there, who ran the program. Lovely guy, we got along super well. He really, respected what I was doing. I felt seen, so I got accepted onto that for my masters, and I was paired with Claire Best, who's a wonderful, amazing poet. She was basically the masters. They pair a libretto writer, the person who writes the script for an opera, with the composer, me. There's 3 teams that they accept, and we write a 25-minute chamber opera over the course of the year. And that was...
So you're the Elton John as opposed to the... What was his name of his writer? Elton John wrote the music.
Oh, was it?
God,
I don't want to say his name.
No, I don't want to say
it. Was it Tim? Wasn't Tim Rice, was it?
No, isn't that...
That's Angela Weber.
Angela Weber.
Oh, gosh, okay. Well.
No, I should know this, but anyway.
Now, just to undermine all credibility.
That's pop music. That doesn't matter.
Yeah, what is that?
Opera.
Who is this John Elton?
That was me trying to... Actually, Elton John listens to so much music. Like, he will know the latest rapper. He will know the latest composer. He probably even knows of you. He does. Yes, he does. He absolutely loves music.
Just imagining him in like a room like in Batman, where they had in the Dark Knight, where they had all the screens. He's sitting there in the dark,
watching everyone. Who's my competition?
Glasses. Well, and if you are listening, I appreciate it. I'm very, very,
he's
I'm very flattered.
Listening. I'm sure he's my number one fan. Sorry, your movie.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was describing the movie through the tangent of the opera for some reason. But basically, I guess I'm saying as to how they kind of arrived at this point because it's so random. So then worked with Claire. Wonderful experience. It was. I grew so much as an artist doing that. And obviously, I also learned, that there's difficulties in these processes when you're working with a lot of people. In these, institutions with certain hierarchies, it can be difficult at times, but that was all navigated fine. I learned a lot about that, how to conduct myself professionally and how to resolve that, and it ended up in this wonderful, amazing kind of end product of we had this opera on stage, and it was just this really cool experience, and it was, and I think I needed that. I think my soul needed that, and so then finished that, and then at the end of my masters, all at once. I was getting married, finishing up my masters, and we were moving to Madrid, all in like a 3-week space. And it was just this crazy thing. And so then I moved to Madrid. Sorry, this becomes relevant to the movie. And then it just turns out that Claire, one of her oldest friends, lives in Madrid. And she introduced me to one of her oldest friends who happened to work for an artist residency. Do you know what an artist residency is? It's basically sort of like a retreat that you kind of go to, you apply to as an artist with a project, and then you can go there for a couple of weeks. It's usually either free or subsidized.
Wow.
And you go there with other artists. And so so Erica, amazing. She introduced me to her friend Teresa, also amazing, who was like, I run this residency, and actually what you're doing could be really interesting. We've got some space maybe if you would be interested in coming. And I was like, absolutely. So I went to that residence, the most incredible experience ever. It was just like, oh my gosh, we should go. Like, it was like, there was just this group of artists of different disciplines, visual artists, director, writers, the second time I went there were dancers as well and stuff, all together doing their own projects, but we lived together for a couple of weeks.
And who pays for this?
So it was run by a foundation, the Fundación Valparaíso, which is run by or in conjunction with the Beckett Foundation in Denmark, which is a huge arts foundation, and so it's subsidised. So we paid a small fee, but most of it was covered.
Sounds amazing.
And well, so when I was there, because what would happen, the day there's no schedule, the only commitment is that you have to be there at dinner at 8:00 to eat with the other artists.
Wow.
And which is amazing. It was such a hard obligation.
God, if only I had more skills. Yeah.
Oh my God, no, you could totally go. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. And it was just the most amazing exchange. And there was a director there.
Right.
A film director. And I had never, I'd never thought, I wanted to do film. I wanted to write music for a film and for the screen, but it was never like, oh yeah, I want to do this. Because for me, as I've increasingly become more in touch with myself, I've become decreasingly interested in projects for the sake of fame or money or whatever. You know what I mean? I want to just kind of do things that feel authentic to myself.
Yeah.
That sounds really, kind of, out myself to say in a sense.
No, I get you. This is number 36, and everyone goes to me, "Are you making any money from it?" And I'm like, "I don't do it for money.
Right.
I do this podcast because it's a passion project." I totally
exactly.
get that.
Yeah. And so when it comes to my composing, I obviously, I want, I there needs to be some kind of money involved, to justify the effort. But for me, it's more about, because I can make money through my other pursuits, which I really enjoy, like teaching or conducting. You know what I mean? So I want to save my composing as something which really is something true to myself. So the point is that I hadn't thought, oh, I want to be a film composer, I want to be like Hans Zimmer, I hadn't want to blah blah blah. So I hadn't really pursued much of that. Right. But then I met this director, and we got along really well. Really nice guy, Cam Christensen, and he was there filming for this documentary about music, all about Duende, which I mentioned earlier. Okay. That's how I know about it. So the movie's called Echo of Everything, and he was there because his whole narrative was framed around Garcia Lorca's idea, kind of. Well, I don't know if it's his idea, but he put it into literature, the idea of Duende, and so he was there to film a flamenco performance. So the foundation, the residency was in this old olive press. And he was.
Sounds fantastic.
I know, and in the library, he got this. He paid this flamenco group to come and perform for us, our own private performance while he filmed it. It was the most.
Was it? How many cameras did he have? Was it just?
I think he had maybe 3 or 4 in this tiny space.
Yeah.
And it was, and in the flamenco performance, because for them, in Andalusia, it's rural Spain's very rural still. So this is probably a big thing for them. I would have thought. And so as a result, the idea of Duende, this kind of spirit infecting the thing, it was there electrically. And as soon as they came on, and as soon as the dancing started, because also we were so close and you could feel the vibrations, and something just, I was just there bawling again. You know what I mean? Like it was really, and I'm not actually a big crier, to be honest, but when something moves me, it really, and it was amazing. And then,
well, it's funny you said, because you sent me a bit of the music that you obviously had written for this film, and I didn't know what to say. I just pressed play, and I was so moved. It was absolutely beautiful. Like, as I say, I've just met you today, and I've been told that you were great, but you don't really know how great someone is. And I thought, he's going to be good. And I was blown away.
Oh, thank you.
So I totally get what you're saying.
Oh, you're too kind. Thank you.
Very, very good.
So, thank you so much.
So you said what the film's called. It's in festivals at the moment.
Yeah. So what happened? So then, just to finish that little thing, that he asked me if I would write the music, because he hadn't had a composer for it yet. It's kind of a daunting, quite metaphysical thing to write music for a documentary about music.
Yeah.
And he was gunning for the Toronto International Film Festival, TIFF. I feel so fortunate to have actually had this experience so early on in my career, because first of all, to get to the point as being the main composer for a film like that is, there's usually a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? You have to go through a lot of steps usually, kind of working as an assistant, and to be able to get to the point where you would be given that chance. So massive thank you to Cam for giving me that opportunity and taking the risk on me. Is that he was so generous in the process, because he told me kind of what he wanted, but then I kind of had my own interpretation as well of what that should be, and seeing the footage, how that could be. He basically was like, there's a lot of this kind of silent film kind of vibe, and this kind of melodramatic. I'd love the music to kind of be almost kind of melodramatic, responding very directly to the picture, which, often in film you want to have something, especially nowadays, something more ambient that's not quite a slapstick in that way. But he wanted to have moments of that. And for me, I wanted to find a more nuanced narrative that could develop with the storyline. So I approached it like I approached my opera. I did this huge, massive diagram as to how the actual music would develop and tell this unfolding story that reaches a culmination in the music that I sent you. So the music I sent you was the music at the end, in the final scene and the credits. But the music you hear there has been hinted at and kind of spiraling towards this moment throughout the whole film. But basically, I would send it to Cam, and sometimes it wasn't what he was expecting at all. But he was so generous with allowing me space to do what I. So that's what I mean.
So he was pleasantly surprised. He's like, "Wow, I didn't even think about
exactly."
it.
And that's what I was saying earlier on. That how I was really fortunate at this point to have had as my first project as well, working with someone that is so generous with the music and didn't just give me a really tight spec and then take it away and edit it, because that sometimes happens where the director, they reserve the final say and they might just be like, okay, well, going to chop this bit, chop this. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was really lucky not to have that, and so a huge thank you to Cam for
what a lovely man. It's and like you say, what an amazing experience.
It really was.
Music does make like a film though. The whole story with the Jaws, for instance.
Right.
Jaws would be nothing without those two notes, right?
I know.
It's fantastic. Back to the Future, my favourite ever film. I probably mention it every day. The music on that, it's like, I don't think it would be the movie.
I don't know the music.
Have you seen it though?
I've seen it, obviously, all of them, yeah.
I test everyone. Have you seen it? Yeah. How would, because obviously now they're listening to this podcast, they're going to go, but I want to hear it. Is there any way that they might be able to hear the music?
Well, I'm just about to make my website live, which will be michaelbascommusic.com. Bascom, that's Bascom for Mike. I always have to, because people always want to put a B on the end or a BE. I don't know why. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Just ends in an M.
Yeah, exactly. It's more simple.
There's no silent letters.
No, exactly. It's very phonetic. Anyway, so michaelbascommusic.com. That's going to go live before the podcast goes live, I think.
Yeah.
And then also I'm going to put it onto Spotify as well, which
this is exciting. This is like, the fact that you're just about to have it out there on a website.
Yeah, and it's cool because it's something which I've been, waiting to do for years, and kind of finally it's.
And now it's the moment.
Yeah.
Now you're putting it out there.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's a cool and almost scary feeling.
So what is the dream of the future? You have your website, you've got your music on Spotify. What's the project you'd love to get?
Oh, that's a question. Honestly, I'm open to just seeing where life carries on taking me. So, for example, in Madrid, I worked tons with choirs, and I would love to write a large-scale choral piece. I'd love to return to my classical roots for a bit, because I think that I want to maintain that connection, because I think that the classical world right now is really at a point where it's trying to figure itself out.
Yeah.
And I think that there's some really exciting and interesting music coming from people like Max Richter, or Peter Gregson. Kind of more film stuff, but but the point is, there's this kind of blending of genres moving into a really interesting kind of post-minimalist time. Minimalist music like Philip Glass and like that kind of stuff.
So this is the future. Like you could be.
Well, I would love to kind of incorporate, and start to mix these kind of genres and stuff, because I feel like classical music went through a large period of writing a very particular type of music, with lots of dissonances, maybe a bit more esoteric in the sense of, it would require a certain education maybe to approach it, to understand what's going on there. And that serves a valuable function. But I think that going forward, I think that's been done. I think that's a movement of music that has been explored extensively. And I think going forward, actually, the reason I look to people like Max Richter, for example, is that, he's doing something which, he's had a great education. I think he was Royal Academy or Royal College of Music. But, his music has a real, academic worth to it, and it has a real, and it's really part of an artistic movement, but it also has a real immediacy to it. It has something which people love. I mean, me and my husband saw him perform at the Crystal Palace Festival. What is that? Is it South Bank Festival?
Yeah. South Bank.
Or South? No, not South Bank. South facing. South. No, the South facing. I can't remember. Gosh, I'm terrible with names.
It's fine. Everything. It's fine. I'm just as bad as you today.
Oh my God, it's hilarious.
I couldn't even remember John's right.
I don't think that we've got a single reference correct.
I might have to do a NB at the end and just say, just for the reference, it meant these are the names that we were trying to think of.
Like. Anyway, and the thing is, it was at a music festival and it was completely sold out with a whole mix of people. And I think that that's really what, and it is classical music, because all it is just instrumental music telling its own story. That's what classical music is. Yeah. It's not for a film, it's not for anything else, it's just for that. And hugely brilliant writing and hugely successful. Yeah. That's not to say that, commercialism is what should be at the core of music. I don't believe that. But I do, I don't believe that something should be written in order to sell. But I do believe that, if you look at something if something is commercially viable in the sense of if it resonates with a lot of people, it just indicates that the narrative you're going for is clear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't think that means that you have to write a certain aesthetic. I just think that kind of idea of narrative is essential. And I think that's something which, we're seeing a lot of with some emerging composers, and I find that very exciting. I'd love to weigh into that narrative, but while also, I would love to do another film, for example, or maybe for TV. Yeah. That would be fantastic.
Well, hopefully some TV friends might be listening. They might be.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, hire me, please. Yeah. I would love to.
Hire him.
And maybe another stage piece. But I think I want to give that a bit of time because I've done a lot of stage work up to this point, and I'm really enjoying the medium of filmed stuff actually.
Yeah, definitely. Nothing beats the live element of classical music, though. Like being in the room where that's remarkable.
Yeah,
isn't it? When you see an orchestra, which obviously is and you mentioned earlier about being in the Madrid art scene. So you got married, you found a lovely husband.
Yep.
Julian. I don't remember that. And you moved to Madrid together.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about the art scene there. What's that like?
So the art scene, Madrid's an odd one because it's such a well-known city, but in terms of classical music, it's and it's funny, people listening to this that know me, I'm always going on about this. I really believe that the country's in the hangover of the dictatorship still, the hangover of Franco, and obviously under a dictatorship, freedom of expression isn't a high priority. You know what I mean? Which obviously limits an art scene. So it's I always said there's so much potential in Madrid, but it's so underutilized. Yeah, it's so untapped.
But like yourself, like when it's been held down for a while, surely eventually the Jack in the Box will come out and all this amazing
I think
art
that's
will come out.
Coming, because for example, the Teatro Real, which is the opera house there, got, I think a couple of years ago, got an award for being the best opera house in the world. And they do some really cool stuff. They program really interesting stuff. Like on their main stage, they programmed Arnold Schoenberg's Moses and Aaron, which is, I don't know if you know anything about Arnold Schoenberg, but he was early 20th century composer, he kind of was the father of like atonal music, music that's just like, bam, 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 completely dissonant, like quite disturbing actually, kind of sounds like a horror movie.
Right.
And, wrote an entire 2-hour opera like this.
Wow.
And they programmed that. You know what I mean? Like it's such a bold artistic move. And that's really cool, and like in the National Auditorium, it's an amazing, beautiful space. And it's getting more and more stuff. But, if you compare to the large venues in London, it's not, in terms of the programming, the amount of programming, it's not comparable yet. But I think it's a missed opportunity because even the price to put something on there is a lot cheaper. So it's kind of me letting, orchestras in the UK know that, if you want to do a Spanish tour, I think it's a great place to go, actually. Because it's an amazing venue. I think that explosion is approaching. I think it's going to take a couple of years. That was the feeling I had. But even when I was there was more stuff in there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has been a blast.
It's been absolutely lovely. Cheryl, your neighbour, was right. Charismatic, vibrant, enigmatic. I'm sure everyone will agree. That's what this has been.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely to meet you.
It's been lovely to meet you too.
Michael.
Thanks. Thank you.
That's it for now. Love you for listening. And don't forget to show love. Thank you to Ollie Trevors for Saucy Naughty Rubbish and Danny Wright for staying in. Both doing gigs right now, so please check them out. Thank you to Alex McCardle for sound and edits. And please follow us on Instagram, Twitter or Facebook at Show Love UK. And if you want to join the conversation, please join the group Show Love Podcast on Facebook. Thank you.
self-stimulation, instant gratification. I'm self-medicating, therapists recommending more meditating, wasted education. I need more admiration, and I don't wanna bother with today. I pretty much missed it anyway. Might as well stay, and I don't wanna bother with today. I pretty much missed it anyway. Might as well stay, I'm staying in. Come dine with me, repeat it on channel 3. I watch it cause I'm feeling hungry. Try and shift the mood, so I ordered Chinese food. Said fuck it, just keep the change, dude. Finance situation, spent on dedication. Dreams of Wembley Stadium and my name carved in